The global financial system is in a position we maybe have never seen before. And here to discuss this subject and the effects that that has on silver and mining stocks is one of the most successful mining executives of our time. That's Keith Neumeyer. He is the CEO of First Majestic Silver, among many other positions he has in numerous companies. But First Majestic Silver, the cream of the crop silver company. They're also, I'm very proud to say, one of the sponsors of our channel. So if you don't own First Majestic Silver, one of the first places to begin with gold and silver mining stocks traded in America and in Canada. We'll link the website right there down below to First Majestic Silver. Make sure you hit the like button on this video, comment down below, go silver, go right there down below. And it's good to see you, Keith.
Well, great to see you again as well, Jake. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. And I wanted to get your take today, right before I was skimming some news between some of my interviews today. And I saw a headline about how AOC, she's here in the United States and, a modern money theory proponent. And she was encouraging Joe Biden to not renominate Jerome Powell for the Fed chair position because essentially she felt he was too conservative in his fiscal policies. And, being someone like yourself that's been in the gold and silver industry for such a long time, you guys have always been talking about the consequences of printing too much money, the devaluation of currency. And these last 18 months, it seems like we hit a supercharge button. So I was just wondering, what's your take on AOC saying, maybe we need someone that wants to print more? And furthermore, what's your view on how much money is being printed? I mean, this seems to be biblical to you and Doug Casey and the Rick Rules of the world that have been talking about this easy money printing.
Yeah, it is pretty nutty times for sure. When I was, well, not even that much younger, just going back, 5 to 10 years, governments tried to balance their budgets. It was just simple as that. If you balance your budget, you were looked at as a good government. If you're running deficits, you were looked at as a bad government. It was just that simple. And governments would run deficits during recessionary periods, which is normal. And then during the booms, they would bring in enough tax dollars to pay off their debts, and they would reset the clock and start over again. So you'd go through series of periods where governments would run surpluses, and then you'd run through periods where they would obviously run deficits. Now it just seems to be just deficit after deficit after deficit. There's a growing number of politicians, and some of them aren't even elected people. Some of them are appointed people, which even makes it even that much worse, because we, as the populace, don't have a choice on who these people are that are running our governments and making these decisions. But there is a growing number of them that actually believe that deficits don't matter. And so what they're telling us is that money doesn't matter, because they could just continually print as much money as they want to pay all the bills that they want, and there's no repercussions. And as long as no one takes them, to the shed and say, hey, you can't do this anymore, they're just going to keep doing it. And it's a pretty interesting world we're living in, and it's hard to really tell, what is going to happen as a result of these policies.
Now, you're in Canada, out in British Columbia. It seems where I live, we've certainly seen inflation. I mean, just even seeing it in gas. And I live in, essentially Midwest America, where things are often a lot less expensive than, say, the West Coast. But it's obvious that things are picking up. How does it look over there? I know Vancouver's already an expensive city.
Real estate prices just keep moving. It's we had this rush of people all of a sudden want to go buy land out in the suburbs. So all these properties that were just sitting there, multi-acre properties, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours outside of the city of Vancouver, just started getting gobbled up. And of course, there wasn't enough of them to meet the demand, so prices exploded on all these mini farms, outside the city, which was pretty interesting. And rents are going up, and very similar to what's happening in the United States. Food prices are out of this world. Gasoline prices, it doesn't mean much for your listeners probably, but we're paying $1.90 a liter up here, and oil's trading just shy of $70 a barrel, and I've never seen $1.90 a liter ever. Even when oil was at $140 a barrel. Wow. A few years ago, a liter of gas, I think, peaked out at about $1.30. So, the price of oil at the pump just makes no sense.
Does it, what do you think is going to happen? Is this just going to keep going and going until there's basically a reset of the currency, in that they slop an extra zero onto it and this continues going? How do you see this playing out?
That's a good question. We've seen, Mexico, Argentina, other countries, or Zimbabwe, other countries around the world, add multiple zeros to their currencies. And, I hope we don't get to that, but it's really tough to say, Jake. That's why I'm so, heavily invested in precious metals, because quite honestly, I think, the whole commodity trade, whether it's gold or silver, whether it's copper or uranium or any of these commodities, even soft commodities like corn and beef and, you have to own, you have to have a part of your, or at least for me, a substantial part of your assets in commodities.
Now, for many people, you would say that every single one of the macroeconomic fundamentals is lining up to say the price of gold and silver should be astronomically higher, yet it isn't. You're someone that's been in this industry for a very long time, and I start to see the comments that trickle in that say, don't even bother with gold and silver, the price is rigged. Why invest in something like silver or silver stocks? Why invest in silver when the price seems to not be reflective of reality? What's the view behind it to you right now when you're looking at it?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and I can tell you it's times like this that we saw gold go from $1,200 to $2,100 in a matter of a few months. And it was great to see that. Silver prices went from the low teens all the way up to $30 an ounce, and then of course the banks, or call them manipulators, or whatever you wish, put whatever label you want on them. Obviously, the price is corrected to levels that they are today, and then the mining sector, most of the mining stocks are now down 50%. But you have to have some faith. I think that I'm a big believer that the money printing is going to cause inflation and debasement of currencies, and I think that the best place to be is in precious metals. And I look at the ticker every day, and I question the thesis. Of course I do. I'm not an idiot, and I see things like Bitcoin and Apple and Google and just continually go up and skyrocket and leave the miners behind. And I've seen it before. I've been in this business for 35 years, and I could tell you that the bull market that started in 2002, that ended in basically the end of 2011, in both silver and gold, and all the mining stocks did not go straight up. There was a lot of heartaches during that 10-year bull market, and we're in one of those periods right now. And I think we're getting close to an end. The action on gold is encouraging. It looks like it's finally basing out and found a bottom. Silver is also starting to base out as well. Oil prices, had a nice run to 75, and they corrected down to 65, and now they're looking like they want to retest 70 and 75 again, likely, in my opinion anyways. It's going to see $100 a barrel in the next 6 to 12 months. That's going to affect the rest of the space. Copper prices, uranium, everything is going to start to move, and this is all to do with the debasement of the currencies, and because there's just more and more cash floating around the system, and you can't buy what you used to be able to buy with $100 bill in your pocket anymore. It takes more of that money to buy the same stuff, and so everything else priced in US dollars has to go up, and it's just a fact. And we'll see it, but it is definitely frustrating.
So you said oil, and I believe the last time or a few times we spoke, you said you felt confident we'd see $100 oil. Do you historically look at, you said you've been in this sector for 35 years. Do you generally see the move of oil as a precursor to a move in the metals? Is that something that you're looking at after a lull for a while, see which direction you see oil beginning to move?
Yeah, the two primary commodities that I watch are copper and oil. They call copper Dr. Copper for a reason, because it really does tell you from a macro perspective, really what's going on out there in the world. And oil, very similar. Oil cannot be manipulated. Of course, the OPEC tries to come out with crazy headlines and tries to move the price around. And Trump, when he was in power, was criticizing Saudi Arabia for not printing more oil and to try to bring the oil prices down and so on and so forth, despite the fact the United States was producing as much 10 or 11 million ounces of oil a day, which in itself was quite unusual. But nevertheless, these are two metals, or two commodities that are almost impossible to manipulate. And then they are the indicative of really what's, as I said, what's going on. So it's hard to see oil not go up and gold go up. They generally, the whole complex, I think, is led by oil and then gold.
And so, besides watching copper and watching oil historically over the last, you've been in this industry not only as an incredibly successful investor in the resource sector, but obviously, one of the more successful executives of a large mining company. What else are you watching right now in the economic and worldwide stage, or something specifically with commodities? What else has your eye?
Well, the U.S. dollar and interest rates. So, the U.S. dollar had a pretty interesting run it just got over 93 on the index last week, and it was getting close to, it should have failed, and all indications, according to the work I do, was that it was going to fail, and in fact it did. So, and that showed me that the whole inflation thesis is still dead on. That whole rally on the dollar, from the low 92s to the low 93s, kind of took the inflation trade out of the wind a little bit. And that's what set the stage for the last couple of weeks of trading. I think almost to a point of capitulation. Some of the comments I've heard from traditional people who follow the commodity sector actually started questioning whether we had reached a peak, and what inflation is going to look like at the end of the year, and what's it going to look like in 2022. And of course, lumber correcting and some of the other commodities correcting as well. It didn't help the thesis. But all of a sudden, come last week, and then into this week, we're now seeing a bid come back into some of these commodities. And I think the lows are now in, as far as I'm concerned. And I think over the next several months, we're going to start the upward trend that was there intact earlier in 2021.
Now, obviously, in inflation trade, as money printing increases, and as people wrap their minds around the fact that this is essentially the new normal, this is something that gold, silver, and mining stocks stand to benefit. Give us a little bit of an inside peek of everything that's been going on at First Majestic. I guess I also want to say, for a retail investor, especially someone that's more speculating in mining stocks, when you see corrections, I would imagine it can be difficult. But I would think, as an executive like yourself that's been in this business for a long time, from the cash flow perspective, it's been nice to have silver holding so strong for so long. You guys have been spitting off some pretty good situation there. So give us an update on what's going on with First Majestic, kind of everyone's favorite stock.
Yeah, well, we are, one of the biggest players in the silver space for sure. I think we're still the purest major silver company on the planet. New York listed, of course, 6,500 employees, 4 producing mines, 3 primary silver mines in Mexico, and 1 gold mine in Nevada. It's interesting. I'm glad we have gold. Probably the first time I've probably said that online, but or maybe not. But when we bought our last mine in Nevada, the Jerritt Canyon mine, which is 100% gold, people were saying, well, you should be focusing on silver, because of course, my whole thesis behind silver is still very much intact. I think we will be seeing sometime over the next few years triple-digit silver for the reasons I've laid out many times in my interviews, which is basically based on supply-demand fundamentals. But we're now 45% of our revenues come from gold, and 55% of our revenues come from silver. And silver is just so volatile. Silver was $30 just a few months ago. It's now just under 24. I know that's a pretty substantial move. And gold does not have those kinds of moves. Gold has been fluctuating in basically $100 range. Call it 1750 to 1850, just for argument's sake. And that's pretty easy for a business to manage and plan. So it's great having that gold revenue. But my view is I'm looking for that right silver asset, and if you can help me out, that would be great.
Man, I got a lot of options for you. I'll be sure to let you know. So the gold buy in Nevada, you're saying that the last while has made you feel very good about that. Is that what you're saying? Because there were some, big gold and silver mining stock bulls that they didn't love it. They were like, hey, you're supposed to be only silver. But to you, you're looking at this now playing out, and you're saying, this is exactly why we did it. It provides us that stability on the cash flow. We don't have a big fluctuation when silver goes from 29 to 23. It's turned out to be great for you on a purely business cash flow perspective, and you're feeling good about it right now. That's what you're saying?
Well, I'm the founder of First Majestic and the CEO of the company, and I, of course, my responsibility is to the shareholders, and I've got to do every move I make is measured and questioned, and I need to protect the business, and having that gold component, in my opinion, helps protect the business a little bit more than just being pure silver, because I've been running this company for 19 years, or really we're coming into our 19th year, and at one point we were 90% silver, going back to the beginning, and it was tough to manage. We would have silver flying all over the place on on an annual basis, and we do budgets that call it $20 silver, and the next thing you know, silver's $12, and then you got to fire a bunch of people and cancel a bunch of exploration programs, and then 6 months later it's $20 again. So you rehire everyone, start exploration programs again. It's a little bit chaotic, to run a business like that. So anyways, that's I love silver, but it's just great to have some gold in the portfolio.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm glad you explained that a little bit more. I can't imagine having to deal with the fluctuations if you're 100% pure play and you're actually trying to build a big business at the same time. That's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. About 20, you said 19 years is how long you've been moving First Majestic. What was, do you remember the day that you guys listed, and do you remember the stock price the day that it listed? I mean, it's quite the story. I mean, you guys are a big company now.
Yeah, well, look, it was not an IPO; it was an RTO. So in Canada, that's kind of like what they call a reverse takeover. So if people are following the SPAC market in the United States, where you have a public company that goes and buys a private company, and then that private company becomes a public company, that's exactly what an RTO is. RTOs have been going on in Canada for as long as I can remember, and the SPAC market was kind of created due to the Canadian financial system. So it's easy in Canada for a company to go public if you're private through the RTO mechanism. So, but I can tell you the first financing that we ever did was at $1.40. and that was in February 2004. And then, of course, the stock has been, all over the place, over that period of time.
So a lot of people have started mining stocks of all different types in the resource sector. You've been around for 35 years. You guys are kind of, everybody knows First Majestic and very well respected. Now, what would you say is the reason that you guys have been able to stick around so long and have this success story? I mean, what do you think separates the way that you built your businesses than other people? I mean, I know you're in Vancouver, so you're always, you've met so many CEOs and executives, and some of them are come and gone. What's made you be able to, what's made it so that Eric Sprott, the greatest natural resource investor in the world's biggest investment is in you? I mean, why is that? I mean, what's the difference?
Well, I hope it comes down to trust. When I put the company together, like our first acquisition was January 2004. That was the La Paria mine. And I told the market at that time that I wanted to be, build the biggest silver company in the world. That was kind of my goal. And then some believed it, some didn't, of course. And in 2004, we produced 25,000 ounces of silver. And that surprised a lot of people that we were able to do it so quickly. And then over the years, when you make promises to the public and you raise money, from people like Eric Sprott and many other people who put money into First Majestic, you have to be honest with people and execute your business plan. And I've been good at doing it, and I think partly the reason for that is, I came from the banking sector in the 80s, and I'm not a geologist. I'm not an engineer. I'm a finance guy, educated in college in finance. And then I was actually going to go down the law path, but I decided not to. And I fell in love with mining and fell in love with the public companies. I started working on the floor for the banks. I used to trade equities for 3 different of the largest Canadian national banks. And in the 80s, and from there, I put together a copper company in 92, and same kind of philosophy, when you say something to the public, you got to take it seriously. And you have to take investors' money, treat it as your own money. And I always put my money where my mouth is. I'm a significant shareholder in First Majestic, as I am in every company that I've ever founded. And the day I sell my stock, will be the day that I resign, or several months after I resign. My share position has gone up every year in the last 19 years, except the year that I got divorced, where my ex-wife took a chunk of my stock. But other than that, my position has gone up every year since I've been running the company.
So you put your money where your mouth is. Eric Sprott does that. You guys are probably 2 of the biggest silver bulls out there. You now work together. Both of you have publicly talked about your belief of $100 silver. We haven't seen too much of Eric recently. I know he had some family things he was taking care of. What's the sentiment between 2 of the biggest silver bulls, Keith Neumeyer and Eric Sprott, right now on the silver market?
Well, I spoke to him last week. Hadn't spoke to him for a couple of months because he is going through some personal situations right now. But he's still extremely active. He's more active in Newfoundland than probably anywhere else in the world. He's in the process of buying up Newfoundland. I think he wants to own the entire province. But he's extremely, extreme bull in silver, and it's nice to be joined. I think I was the first one to call for triple-digit silver. It's a phrase that I came up with almost a decade ago, and now I'm seeing people copying that phrase, and which is good to see. And I'm seeing more and more people like Eric and many others start to really look at silver for the reasons I look at silver, because it's a real supply-demand fundamental rationale. We are in deficits, and don't let people tell you different. And there is a lot of paper that trades, every day, which unfortunately affects the physical price. But I think that the physical market will ultimately prevail, and so does Eric. Him and I feel exactly the same way. And Sprott Silver Fund, the PSLV, I think was bought over 70 million ounces of physical silver this year so far. At least at last count, it could be higher than that by now. I know they're running a program to buy more silver. I just don't have an updated number. But yeah, it's great having Eric as a partner. And yes, First Majestic is his largest personal holding.
When you say that triple digit silver, and you kind of came to that belief about a decade ago, how has the fundamentals, or is there any other drivers that have been added to that list that 10 years ago when you said that versus right now when you're looking at the world today?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jake, because when I put First Majestic together, I came from a copper, and I had a choice. What am I going to do? The dot-com bubble was in the midst of bursting. The Nasdaq was down, every day, and I saw a bid coming into the metal sector, and gold was coming off its lows, and silver was coming off its lows, well, copper as well. And so I saw the whole commodity complex turn. So I started thinking, okay, it's now time to put together another company. And I looked around at different metals, and coming from copper and really having kind of a bent towards supply demand. And there was just so many gold companies out there that it was confusing to me. So I didn't want to just be another gold company. So silver just jumped out at me as just this crazy supply demand. And I was looking at the demand side as being computers and cell phones. And cell phones were just barely today everyone's got a cell phone, and many people have two cell phones. Back then hardly anyone had a cell phone. So I kind of saw this whole computer cell phone thing taking off, and I said, geez, I got to get into the silver business. And then it wasn't really until a decade later that I predicted at the time that silver would hit $50 an ounce. Back in 2002, 2003, which it did. It took 9 years for it to get there, but it finally did there in April 2011. I did not predict it was going to fall all the way back down to $13, mind you, but that was a surprise to me and probably everyone else in the mining sector. But nevertheless, that happened. But when I saw the solar panels and electric cars come into play, and these are two pretty new industries, and today solar panels are consuming something like 100 million ounces of silver. Electric cars are producing somewhere around also 100 million ounces of silver. So you've got two brand new buyers of this metal, which is already a tight market as it is, taking out over 20% of the world's supply. The miners produce about 850, call it 800 to 850 million ounces of silver per year. And you've got two industries that are taking off 200 million ounces and these industries didn't exist, 5+ years ago. So that's a pretty big game changer in any sector. So that's where I came up with the triple digit silver theory or viewpoint.
Yeah, that's amazing that's you didn't see that, but now it's accounting for about 20%. Now we're beginning to see many governments, I know in America, I think the governor of California, who hopefully won't be any longer in a few weeks with a recall coming, but he said that he wants everything to be electric. I believe maybe Biden said that he had a goal for a certain date. There's been many other maybe type G7 type of countries that have given dates. Do you think that now you can see it, so it's not a total black swan, but do you think the black swan from 10 years ago was this electrification and this move towards 100% electric vehicles? I mean, if we're not even close to 100%, but if it's already taking that much silver, I'm kind of just trying to do the math in my head. If California goes 100% and Canada does and France does, I mean, that's a lot of silver.
Well, I've thrown these numbers out on air before, and they're probably a little bit different than they were 6 months ago. But there's approximately, just for your listeners' information, 1.4 billion automobiles sitting on the surface of the earth. Most of those are obviously fuel combustion cars. There's 90 million automobiles produced per year, of which about 5 million, and that number's growing, but about 5 million electric cars produced. So at a rate, so give that 5 million some kind of growth rate over the next decade. It's got to grow at some pretty fast pace. Wow. To hit the targets of governments. Some governments are saying no fuel combustion cars on our city roads by 2030. Okay, so that's 8 years from now, and you've got how many cars you're going to replace with electric cars, and the world is only producing 5 million of them a year. Of course, Audi and Volkswagen and GM and Chrysler, they're all coming to the bandwagon, so that 5 million will grow, but it's got to grow pretty darn fast to replace over 1 billion cars that are currently fuel combustion cars, and that's a lot of silver.
I mean, that's got to be more than the entire mine's supply of. I mean, do they think about any of this before they started throwing out those dates?
No, and then look at copper. Like copper, nickel, lithium. You name it, and then now you're going to power it. This is like the whole uranium thesis as well. Like where's all this energy coming from? The whole thing is a bit of a joke. I can't imagine them reaching their targets until at least 2050.
Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, the silver price would really have to move. So
no, you would have to be mining, so sub-economic. You'd have to be mining waste dumps. Because there's a lot of silver in waste dumps. Think about all the televisions, all the refrigerators, all the toasters, all the washers and dryers that are sitting in landfills, and that they would have to go and dig them up and just remove all the copper and silver out of all these electrical components just to get enough of it.
It's amazing that they throwing out these types of figures with how, I mean, it's almost mathematically impossible. I mean, it is mathematically impossible, basically.
The mining sector is not prepared for it, and the mining sector couldn't grow that quickly. The mining sector doesn't have the capital to do it, and nor the will to do it. Look at during the last bull cycle. When gold hit $1,900 in 2011, and silver hit 50, and copper was at 450, and the mining sector started to do some fairly large M&A transactions, and then next thing you know, the metal sector drops like crazy, and all these mining executives get criticized for doing these deals at the top of the market. But the mining executives were trying to build their businesses. They didn't know that the metal price was going to drop a year or two later. So they were doing what they thought was right, and also what the banks wanted them to do, because the banks supplied them the money to do it. You think this time around, the same mining executives are going to go spend $1 billion building a mine that 5 years from now they're going to get criticized for? I don't think so.
Yeah, so there's a term, quantum leap, right? And that's like a nonlinear move in something. And I wonder if you believe that the nonlinear move in precious metals may come, specifically in silver, could come from this push towards the electrification of everything. Do you think now, when you're looking at it today, that could be one of those movements?
In silver, for silver and copper, and other metals like that, yes, and that's what I've said multiple times. There was, I felt, and we'll see this whole Reddit crowd, if they, because they are having an impact. You see premiums in silver quite high, still $5 an ounce, in some cases higher, some cases a lot higher. So there is a new buyer out there. Whether that new buyer, call it the Reddit crowd, name them what you will, but and it's pretty tight market, as I already said. But my thesis, even before Reddit, was that it's going to be the industrial buyer that's going to change this market, because they're going to wake up and realize, hey, look, they can't build iPads, they can't build the automobiles because they just can't get the metals. So they can't, and that's going to be a real problem for them, because then what's their choice at that point? Go by the miners. And I think that's kind of what I've been expecting to see. And, we've seen like Elon Musk, dabble a little bit on the lithium space and some chat about nickel and so on and so forth. But we haven't seen like an Apple or one of these huge, multi, companies, come into this space and say, hey, we need to go buy a copper mine or we need to buy a silver mine. When that happens, and I think it's likely to happen, that's going to change the entire business, and that'll change price, because it's going to be these guys that won't accept the price, because they're used to building an iPhone for a couple $100 and selling it for $1,000, right? They're not going to go mine silver and cost them $20 to mine silver and then sell it at 23. They're just not going to do it. So they'll, in my opinion, the whole pricing mechanisms will just change. It'll probably turn into like an OPEC or De Beers, where or uranium, where everything is just privately priced, outside of the financial markets, and industry just takes care of it, and there's no longer a futures market, that we experience today.
Wow, that's interesting. So does that happen because the paper market gets overwhelmed, or does it happen because the buyers that are coming in are industrial and they don't care about the paper market?
In my opinion, the mining sector is tiny, and we have no political clout because of our size. Mining is, looked at as, one of these, like oil and gas, right? Is looked at as a dirty business, and no one wants to do much about it. There's politicians don't want to help the miners, and and they just the miners kind of get thrown off to the side, and the governments will help us once in a while if we need help, but rarely do we do much or get much from them. We're taxpayers, and we have to supply everything, whether it's water, whether it's electricity, whether it's housing, whether it's local infrastructure, what have you. The miner is responsible for everything, and with no assistance, nothing. You look at a high-tech company, totally different situation. They're respected businesses. They're assisted by governments. They're given grants. They're given free land. They're given free infrastructure, free housing, access to electricity and energy, and so on and so forth. Just because those governments want those industries in their backyard. So if Apple owned a silver mine, it doesn't matter where, they wouldn't get the phone call from the government, because the government's not going to stand up to them. But the miners are so small, like the top 50 miners are smaller than the top 5 largest corporations of the world. And then those top 50 miners supply those top 5 high-tech companies with all the raw materials they need. And the miners barely make a profit on supplying that, yet the high-tech companies make nothing but money, consuming the products that the miners produce.
Yeah, that's good. That's quite the story to kind of full circle wrap it up. Anything else you think that we missed that's important? Anything else you want to say? Any other exciting things going on with First Majestic, or anything else that you think we missed?
Well, we agreed not to talk about anything controversial, but you got me going. So
this wasn't even controversial. This was supply and demand, baby.
Okay.
No, I think that's fascinating. I mean, that's very rarely. I mean, everyone kind of that invests in commodities knows who you are, but very rarely do you really see, the 14, 15 steps ahead of where you think this could go. So I think that's pretty fascinating.
Well, if you watch iRobot, the movie, you kind of get to where we're going, right? And where you've got a couple of very, very large multinational conglomerates, multi-trillion-dollar companies that basically own everything and own the entire supply chain from the time anything gets grown or taken out of the ground right till it's consumed by the end user. So, there was a time 20 years ago where I thought the mining industry was going to be the banks of the future, but I think that thesis is completely wrong. I think that high tech companies are the banks and are the primary decision makers. And we're seeing that time and time again, unfortunately. And I think ultimately they're going to own the miners.
So tell me what's the big goals coming up with First Majestic as we kind of wrap up? Anything else that you think is important?
Well, Jerry Canyon was a big acquisition for us. It's our largest acquisition ever. We have said publicly that we think that mine can double in size by 2024, and we're making investments today to accomplish that. We've got major drill programs going on in Mexico as well. We got our Santa Elena mine that's a new area which we call Ermitaño, which is an area that we've been developing since 2016, is coming online in early 2022. So we're expecting to see Santa Elena, come close to doubling in size over the next, 12 to 18 months. So we've got two great assets that are growing, so we're just assuming metal prices continue where they are, or hopefully higher, as I'm expecting they're going to do over the next couple of years. I think it's good times for the mining sector, and specifically First Majestic.
Is your goal, you said your goal used to be the biggest silver producer in the world. Do you still have an ambition like that in the future?
It's in our mission statement, and that is a fact. And it's tough because, there's lots of gold mines out there for sale, which is surprising because gold is a much rarer, or apparently a much rarer metal than silver. But it's really tough finding good silver mines. They're just not around. There's lots of small little silver mines around, but for a company our size, $4 billion market cap, it's tough for us to, go buy a small little silver mine. We need something a little bit scaled up, and they're just not that easy to find.
So do you think that you guys will continue to be looking, or just can you continue to expand everything you've got going on? What's the goal here for 2022?
Yeah, we're obviously internal growth is important. We're spending a lot of money. We're expanding Santa Elena, as I just said. We're expanding Jerry Canyon, we just acquired back in April. So yes, we're spending money. We're expanding the business. We're expecting this year. On a silver equivalency basis, will be around 30 million ounces of silver equivalent, which is 45% gold, as I said earlier, 55% silver. And we're looking to see that number reach, close to 50 million ounces by 2024. And that's just on the assets that we have in our portfolio today.
Great stuff. So for everyone listening to today's episode, right there down below, we got the link to First Majestic website. Be sure to check out First Majestic Silver, one of our favorite silver and gold mining stocks. Give us a comment down below that says Keith Rules right there down below in the comments. Comment down below, Keith Rules. Keith, have I missed anything? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
You're always very thorough, Jake, and it's always a pleasure talking to you and being in front of your audience. I love watching your stuff. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, it's great to connect with you too. And make sure you hit the like button on this video, copy and paste it, share it out there on the World Wide Web. I want to thank you for listening to today's episode, and we will link all things First Majestic right there down below.